Okay. Commissioner Carter.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Schiff.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Walton, she's coming later. Vice Chair Francis Tedora Hargraves.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Ottman.
Present, Ann Arbor.
Okay. Commissioner Birch. Commissioner Mary.
Here in Philadelphia.
Commissioner Billups. Okay. Councilmember Ranlawi.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Okay. And Chair Lisa Jackson.
Present in Pittsfield Township.
We have a quorum.
Is there you all have gotten a chance to review the agenda, I assume. Is there
Yes.
a motion to approve it?
I move to approve it.
Is there a
Support.
second?
Support.
All in favor of approving it, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The June agenda is approved. Now we've come to the time for public forum.
Madam Chair, before we go into that, I would like to go to old business and the tabled motions from last time. I would like to renew the motions of, my motion was to appoint Dr. Jackson as chair and Commissioner Francis Dora as vice chair for this round, starting June of 2021 round of ICPOC commissioner meetings.
So in that case, we should move to reorder the agenda just a tiny bit. Is there a motion to rearrange?
Yes,
Motion to
I'll move to rearrange the agenda to move the nominations of chair and vice chair up just after approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so Commissioner Othman has a motion to nominate a chair and vice chair. If anyone else is interested in running though, or serving in those capacities, this is certainly a good time to say so, and we could talk about the responsibilities of the positions, or if anybody wants to make a case for why they would want to serve in these positions. Is there anyone else who might consider, I'm not trying to abdicate, but is there anybody else who might consider serving as chair or vice chair? Okay, in that case, Commissioner Othman has a motion to nominate. You should.
Yeah, the motion, I need a second, the motion. I need a
Is there
commissioner
a second for his motion?
I second.
Actually, Commissioner Othman, you should probably call it.
Anyone for the nominations, say aye.
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 Anyone against the nomination, say no. Motion carried.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. I was
Yeah.
thinking of objecting, but I realized I would be outvoted, so.
And the second motion is also, we have sometimes interactions with the media, and just to keep things in order, I would like us to make a motion to appoint Dr. Jackson and or Commissioner Tedora, Francis Tedora, to represent the ICPOC when we have an encounter with the media. So then in this case, we will have some kind of control over the flow of information and updating on what is really happening. So my motion is to appoint Dr. Jackson and or Commissioner Francis Tedora to be our liaison with the media.
Is there a second?
I second.
You should call it, Commissioner Othman.
Can I have some discussion on that, please?
Absolutely.
It just seems to me, since the positions may change, that rather than naming the individuals, that the positions of chair and vice chair would be the liaison to interact with the media. So I would suggest that as a friendly amendment to the motion.
I think that's a valid point, but given the fact that the individuals who were named, we just nominated them to be chair and vice chair. So it's really the chair and vice chair, but it happens that I just named them. But you're right, it's the chair and or vice chair would be our representative to the media. Yes.
And so I think I am allowed to participate in the discussion on this. I think it's actually an excellent idea, and it's a change we could make to our bylaws, but we could also say that the chair and or vice chair would be spokespeople and or a designate. And so there may be a time when the chair or vice chair might prefer that somebody else be the media liaison. And so that way, if we change the bylaws to it in that way, then it would be clear and going forward that it is the responsibility of the chair and or vice chair or a designee. And so it makes sense, Commissioner Carter, that it's the position, not the people. And that's a change we can make to the bylaws. And so for the purposes of this, we could do it this way, but we can change the bylaws such that going forward, it's more clear and streamlined, if that makes sense.
Great.
Is there any more discussion on Commissioner Othman's motion? Then I think now you can call it.
Well, now that you are the chair, you can call it. We just nominated you as the chair.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Othman. And so now we've come to the time for a public forum. Denise, can you tell if we have any callers present?
Yes, we do. We have one caller.
Excellent.
Caller? Hello?
Hi.
Good afternoon. It's public forum.
Hughes. Hi.
Hi.
So this is Michelle Hughes, and I'm calling in to talk about tasers, because at the city council meeting last night, they approved a five-year contract involving a taser upgrade and things like that. And I would like to start a conversation about whether tasers are something that we actually want in our community. I think that the orthodoxy is that tasers keep us safe because they're used in situations where police would otherwise have to use a gun. And so it's better to have an officer with a taser than to have a gun. And I've read some articles and I sent them to, but I think I sent them to the city council, and I think I only sent them to you guys. I think I only sent them to Dr. Jackson here. I forgot to send it to the rest of you, but I think that orthodoxy might not be as 100% true as people think it is. It's because the way I hear about it is that police will use a gun in gun situations, and having a taser doesn't stop that from happening. What they do instead is that having a taser available will create a new situation where police would have otherwise used non-lethal force to restrain somebody. But because they have a taser, they use that. And taser is not non-lethal. It's less lethal. And police in Michigan have actually killed people before by using tasers. In 2009, there were 2 incidents in Bay City, Michigan, in which teenagers were killed by police who were using tasers. And so I think that I think that if the police hadn't had the taser, they wouldn't have shot those teenagers. They would have just used some method of physical restraint or something like that. So I'm hoping that we can have a discussion about this and think about it for the next 5 years, so that when the contract comes up again, we'll be able to think about it. And I think after I sent that email to the city council, some city council members met with police who said, oh no, tasers are great and we need them. And I'm hoping to have more of an independent evaluation about that. And that's why I'm hoping that the Independent Police Oversight Commission could lead an investigation about that, rather than just, hearing from the police and taking their word for it. So yeah, I guess that's all I can say without, sending those links to you, but ask Dr. Jackson, she can forward them to you.
I was going to say, I don't think I have it, but I do have some other articles because this has come up in some other contexts. And as you mentioned, council members did have some conversations with the police about it. It's actually a very interesting conversation to have because across the country, there is no single standard, no single legal standard about whether tasers represent deadly force or not. Now, we know that they certainly can be deadly. There's no question about that. You mentioned Bay City, but there was a young person killed in Detroit maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, by a police officer with a taser. And that police officer's license was revoked because of his use of that taser in that case. The young man was on an ATV and he was shot with a taser and subsequently crashed and died. And so this has happened several times in Michigan, as we all know. And across the country, there is no sort of reckoning about whether tasers are considered deadly weapons. And so there's a couple different sides to that argument. In some cases, they're considered deadly weapons because if a police officer is confronted with someone who has a taser, then they are able to use deadly force in countering that use, right? In some cases, they've been considered deadly force because they have caused deaths. Sometimes they are considered less lethal. But there is no single legal standard across the country. And so I think it's a very interesting conversation, and one in which communities need to be engaged about what the use of tasers mean, because I think there is one sort of narrative that tasers are safer than guns, but you actually have to look at the way in which they're used. And so I think it's an interesting conversation. I know that some of the upgrades that happened because of this contract were making them a distinct color and enabling information to be transferred whenever they were removed from the holster, for example. And those things certainly seem to be improvements on the surface. We would hope that people would be less likely to pull a gun when they meant to use a taser, since they look so significantly different. They should be on different sides of the body, obviously. We would hope that there would be information about their usage, because that information is transmitted sort of automatically, technology-wise. There becomes a record that the taser was removed from its holster, and that should go in use of force reports. But we have lots of concerns about the data around those things in Ann Arbor already. How accurate are the data that we get about use of force, whether that's guns, tasers, or other kinds of use of force? But perhaps that will be an improvement. But whether they should be used or not is a really big community conversation. How are they used? How are they used in Ann Arbor? Are they used in Ann Arbor often? And police have absolutely made the case that they need them. They want them. I think the contract was $915,000. And I think I heard someone point out in the council meeting last night that, you're not paying for the taser, you're paying for the technology, the licensing, the usage. But I think we all understand that the cost of the tasers is built into that. Nonetheless, it's a pretty significant sum, almost $1 million on tasers every year. So I think as we do outreach, and I think, a community forum, as we get to coming in person more often, I think we could do some research and have a conversation about tasers on our agenda even, and have people come and talk about from, you know, from many different perspectives about what they think about the use of tasers. You know, we could have Chief Cox certainly present his perspective, and we could have other people who have thought about it, because there are some people in the community who sort of study that and could talk a little bit about pros and cons, and you know, hopefully we'll have data on their usage, and then we could talk about that from a data-driven perspective as well. It's not something we have now, but something we are definitely requesting. So anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I think I would suggest that if it's going to be like 4 or 5 years, I think having a empirical data on the use of taser as well as use of force, and how frequent and what type of incidents where the taser has been used. So if we know more about that, we would be more informed about any kind of recommendations for the future. Unless we have the data, it's just a matter of looking at other places. And if there are some other studies where they compared police officers and other departments in other cities, the frequency of the use of the tasers and the impact of that on the individuals who were supposed to neutralize or control, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, we might have data probably in 2 years, but also if it's going to be infrequent, it's hard to tell. So that would go maybe 5 years to get enough data to be statistically significant to know whether it warrant or not having tasers carried by police officers. So I think it's worth, as Commissioner, as we would like to see data, and the early we start collecting data, the better. So we would like to be informed, and also to make any future recommendations and suggestions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. There was a brief discussion yesterday at the council meeting when approving this contract, and we'll be having ongoing conversations with the police department. I just wanted to clarify something, that the $915,000 that was approved is for 5 years, not just for 1 year. And then that also is technology that equips the body cams. So anytime one is deployed, and when it's deployed, it's not actually used, but just taken off its resting position, the body camera begins to record. So I just wanted to make sure that folks know about the body cam connection with the tasers, and that is a 5-year contract for that sum, and not just 1 year. Thank you.
And just to tag on to that, of course, the public should understand, I'm sure the commission is well aware, that when a taser is unholstered, that is considered a use of force. So whether or not someone fires the taser or not, if it is taken out of its holster and a person is able to even see it, is considered a use of force. So it is important that that connection is made, and such that data can be logged accurately. It'll be interesting to see how that happens, how often that happens, whether the data match up with the whether the technology sort of matches up with the physical data or not. Did you have another comment, Commissioner?
Well, just in response to that, I think the police chief was there yesterday, and he mentioned, I think it was used a total of 6 times in the last 2 years. I think 4 in 1 year and twice another year. So there are some records already when it comes to that deployment of that weapon.
And usually they have paper reports of that. So it'll be really interesting to see if the technology, is able to be as accurate as their paper reports. I think that's always a nice thing when you see new technology. You want to have some reliability, and you want to see whether you have concurrence with those two kinds of data. So I think that'll be interesting to see. But I think talking about tasers will be something that we'll do more in the future, because it is a conversation in the community about public safety. and whether that is perceived to enhance public safety or not, or if there, what kind of community concerns there are around the use of tasers. So it's a really important topic. Thank you, Michelle Hughes, for bringing it to us. I don't think I was on your email list about the articles, but I do have some and have looked at it some. It's something that MCOS has looked at as well, but I'm always interested in any information that anyone wants to send us about that. Denise, do we have any other caller?
No other callers. Commissioner Wanton is present. Commissioner Wanton, will you please give us your location, please?
My apologies for being a few minutes late. Yes, I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Thank you.
I was late also.
Commissioner Billups, your location, please.
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Thank you.
Just a point of privilege before we approve the minutes. Commissioner Billups, just wanted to commend you and note the significant anniversary at the Peace Neighborhood Center yesterday. Yesterday is the day you had the celebration, correct?
Sure was, yeah.
So you should tell us a little bit about it. 50 years, I believe.
50 years. Peace Neighborhood Center has been in operation since 1971 on the west side of Ann Arbor and providing services to people all throughout this city and in some cases throughout the county. So we're very proud of this milestone and of being an agency that prides itself with helping people find their greatness and helping the community be unified and being a place where people can talk about commonalities. So
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
thank you
Congratulations.
very much.
Congratulations.
Wonderful organization. The kind of work you guys do is, I think, often underappreciated. There are so many people whom we know who have passed through your doors. I saw on your website, there was like a place you could make a comment if you had ever come through the Peace Neighborhood Center. It would probably break the internet if all of the people commented there. But congratulations.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, so is there a motion to approve the minutes from both April and May?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from our meetings, April and May.
Is there a second?
I second.
Are there any corrections or discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So the next thing is just a discussion of something that came up in City Council yesterday, which involves proposed changes to the ordinance that instituted this commission. And I emailed each of you a PDF and you could see some of the suggested changes, and I'll just talk about them briefly. Council had its first reading yesterday, and there are three significant areas. The first of which is really just a correction. When commissioners were initially appointed to ICPOC, when it began, because it had not existed before, that process involved applicants being screened by the Human Rights Commission and ranked and rated, and then conversations with 4 city council people who then put forward nominations to council. And then, and that process was detailed to some degree in the ordinance. And then when it came to appointing new commissioners, it referred back to the original process. Obviously the Human Rights Commission is not interested in being a part of, not that they it's just not their job to nominate commissioners for the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. So that needed to be remedied. In doing so, one of the changes that we requested was to be a bit distinct from other commissions because of our independence. And so what we asked is that the independent community, a subset of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would review applications, interview candidates, and make recommendations to 4 council liaisons, the 2 council liaisons to this commission, as well as the 2 to the Human Rights Commission, who would then have the opportunity of putting a recommended candidate forward or not. They could decide they didn't want to, for council. council's approval, and then the full council would vote on that particular nomination. That happens de facto with some commissions, but one of the most important things, and I know this is a little bit of a, this is a little challenging perhaps for council, is that this commission does not function like other commissions in that it needs to be independent. It needs to be independent to maintain its integrity. It needs to be independent because community police oversight commissions, this is one of the hallmarks. I know you have all read the 13 principles of oversight, but independence is chief among those. And so it would not serve the credibility of this commission well if the commissioners were thought to be either sort of rubber stamp candidates or political appointees or friends of council who were placed on this commission for, you know, as a favor. Now, I'm not sure serving on this commission would be, you know, a favor to anyone. It's a lot of work, but we cannot even have the appearance of that. And certainly that has not happened to date, just to be clear, so that's not misconstrued. But we cannot have the appearance of that. We cannot have the appearance that somebody wants to pad their friend's resume or their up and coming grad student friend's kid's child's resume by putting them on this commission. And so we think it appropriate that we go through that process and make that recommendation, not only because of the independence, but also because we have the best idea of what kinds of demographics we might be missing. And so at council meeting last night, I mentioned, for example, that we might want someone who is presently unhoused or has experienced homelessness, that we may want someone from the undocumented community, that we may want to have a person who was formerly incarcerated on this commission, and that these are conversations that we need to have about what demographics would best suit who's here now and who would be here in the future, what kinds of assets we might want on this commission. And so we need to be the determinants of that. Now, that is not the way other commissions work. And so this is a change for council. This is quite different. I understand. I have had communications with several council people, some of whom feel like, you know, they would like to just be able to appoint people to this commission. And, you know, certainly I strongly oppose that because we do need to maintain a little bit of a firewall if we're able to do that. There are communities, in fact, who work like this and who have subsequently moved to take the nomination process away from city council and have it reside in the community. And so there are several communities in a couple large cities and smaller ones that have formed groups who do the nominating, interviewing, vetting, and appointing to the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission or Civilian Review Board or whatever they're called in those communities. And so what we're asking for is certainly not radical. It is different from how other commissions work. So we understand that. We understand a little bit of discomfort that comes with that. But I think that that is a necessary consequence of having a commission that is going to be able to be represented in the community with integrity, and that people are not going to be concerned that we are sort of politically motivated by whomever is in office at the time. The second change has to do with the number of information managers. So information managers are a subset of the Police Oversight Commission who actually review complaints. That means that they have access to privileged information from the police department. We now see some unredacted information. We see body cam footage, dash cam footage, some reports, some disciplinary history that we did not see before. The current ordinance limits that to 3 people, and we have requested that that be increased to 5. We do not expect, however, that we will have 5 information managers per case at all. So let me explain that request. There was a case where we had 3 commissioners who were assigned to a case, and they all saw that privileged information. And then I thought that we would be benefited by the expertise of another commissioner who was not assigned to that case. But we could not ask that commissioner to review those privileged documents because that would have meant that 4 people would have had access to it, and we would be breaking the ordinance. Vice Chair Tadora Hargraves has pointed out that in the review of documents, it might happen that someone knows a person involved in the case and they might need to recuse themselves, for example, and then a fourth commissioner would need to come on, take their place and see the documents. That would still mean 3 people in the complaint review meeting, but it would mean that 4 people would have seen the documents. So we can see that has the potential for happening. It is important that we have 5 though. The 5th person does not need to necessarily review complaints, but they have to have access to all the privileged information because that person needs to track all of the complaints in terms of looking at patterns and practice. Are there patterns with specific police officers? Are there patterns with specific incidences? Is it that we don't have any complaints against one officer more than once? Maybe there's 20 complaints and there are 20 different officers. Or are there 20 complaints against one officer? Are the complaints all different from each other? Or is there kind of a pattern in terms of the kinds of complaints? And so we need one person who has access to all of that privileged information who can make those kinds of analyses. And so one of the feedback I got from council was that, that might be too onerous on the police to have that much information going to 5 people. We do not expect that would be the case all of the time. What we expect is that there is one person who is in charge of analysis and then 3 information managers. In the meeting, there will just be 3 people. And the person doing the analysis will keep track of the data, will keep track of the information. But in order to see it, they need to be deemed an information manager. And so that title then comes with the ability to see this kind of information and track it and make some analysis. And so that's why we made that request. And then the 3rd change to the ordinance was actually not brought by us. It was brought to us by City Administrator Tom Crawford. And it has to do with, I'm trying to scroll to the language, it has to do with the ability of this commission to begin to review complaints in some limited situations before the police have finished their investigation and or disciplinary processes. Currently, we only review cases after the police are completely finished. And the task force that preceded us fought for the ability for this commission to be able to review cases in tandem or in parallel at the same time, temporally. And that was not granted by the city. But now the city has come and said that they think that in some specific and limited cases and with the chief's permission, we should be able to do those in parallel. It was specifically mentioned that this would apply to the Wimberley case where the police went to, in response to a 911 home invasion call, went to the wrong house, broke down the door, went in with this police officers and showed their weapons, and then had to send a different team of people to the second location. And that we might be encouraged to begin to investigate that case before the police are finished with their process. Now, it seems that the police are pretty much finished with their investigative part of it, but the disciplinary recommendations are still moving through appeals processes for some of the people involved. And it seems that the city would prefer that we get started writing a report about this before that's finished. And so that's why that ordinance change happened. It was not something we requested. It is not what the task force was fighting for either, because that would mean we could do that all of the time and we would not need permission to do that. So this is a very limited situation. And my questions to council last night, I asked for clarification. I said, well, when would that happen? Is that something we could request? Is that something the police would request? Would that come from the city attorney's office, the city administrator's office? That I felt like they needed to be specific about when this could be enacted. If it's all of the cases, some of the cases, any of those instances. I also pointed out that if we were to mention, for example, that there were discipline assigned to an officer, because there was, and later that person appealed the discipline and got the discipline reduced, when that happens, that discipline, if it gets removed, it's like it never happened. And so we could be talking about an officer who got disciplined who later would say, no, I didn't get disciplined, and then would probably file a grievance because we said they were disciplined when they weren't. So even if that information were true at the time, it could be later untrue. And my question was, what protection is there from us from those kinds of grievances? And so I felt like there needed to be a little bit more work in terms of clarifying those things before they bring that forward. So the first two items are a little bit more straightforward. This one is a little bit less clear. And I think there needs to be a little bit more work just to sort of dot some I's and cross some T's. Questions, comments, thoughts?
So were these proposals to change, or any of them have been changed, or
Not yet.
not yet? What does it take? What does it take to change them? Or
So they had a first reading on the 21st, and then when council next meets, which will be after the July 4th holiday observed on the 5th, they would then vote to make the changes. So it will be on the agenda. Councilmember Romlawi, will there be a public hearing for that one before?
Yeah. Yes, all ordinance changes have public hearings.
Thank you. So there'll be a public hearing where people can call in and express their sentiments about the ordinance changes. And then after going through that process, council will vote.
That's correct.
I keep looking at my calendar. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's the 6th. I think
It's Tuesday the 6th
we're observing the 4th on that Monday.
on that Monday the 5th.
so are we going to see them in writing? Are you somebody able to send them to us in writing?
I sent them to you as a PDF. I think it came after the email with the House, Senate, and House and Senate proposed changes. So the second email I sent today.
Oh, okay. I
So
saw
you can
what.
see them, and they have track changes in them, so you can see what those are.
Is there any chance that we would be able to have the ordinance changed in the way that the task force originally wanted it, which would enable us to be able to do concurrent investigations?
Council member, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, yeah, but you have a lot of issues with the collective bargaining agreement and other, structural agreements that are already in place. I don't think it's going to be possible. I mean, I guess anything is possible, but based on the CBA and other things, I don't think so. But I know we have others here on the call that may be better able to answer that. I don't know if Ariane Slay can chime in and describe the technical challenges with having concurrent investigative powers.
I think we can't, and we can't do everything, Jude, that the task force wanted. Like, we couldn't substitute that ordinance for this one in whole, but are there pieces of it, if that's what you mean? I thought that's
Yeah,
what
I'm
you meant.
asking specifically about this piece.
If there are pieces of it, absolutely. And so that's just the will of council. Does council want to enable that process or not? I mean, some of the pieces of the different things that the task force wanted. For example, when this was brought to us, they just wanted to change this particular clause about concurrent investigations in special cases. And I said, well, I don't think we're interested in doing that unless you clean up some of the other things, like the way people are nominated and also the information managers. And so that was more a concession to us, to say, that they would be willing to do that since they were going into the ordinance to work on it. Can we propose other changes to the ordinance? Again, absolutely. Attorney Slay, were you about to speak to some pieces of that?
Sure. There's a couple of things that we talked about when we looked at concurrent investigations. Those investigations can be one of two. They could be done internally by the police department in their professional standards sections. They can also be criminal investigations. So I think there is potential for overlap in due process issues in people's constitutional rights, their ability to a fair trial if it's criminally prosecuted or it's potentially heading that way. So we do need to be very careful that we are not trampling over anyone's rights in the process. I think what Dr. Jackson is spot on, is that when we have a case where the investigation section is done, like city's done asking questions and we don't have pending criminal investigation, then that might be an opportunity once the discipline or lack thereof discipline is passed down and we have some kind of appeals process. That would be a time where we aren't infringing on someone's constitutional rights potentially. So I think that's why initially we said no to concurrent investigations.
I mean, if it's being brought up that there are some circumstances when this might be able to happen, I guess the one thing that I would say, I understand that it may not be possible to just blanket say that it can, right, and have just people pick, but I would like there to be some kind of mechanism, if possible, where ICPOC has a say in it, right? Whether it's the case that there are certain things that we want to and we think need to be expedited and concurrently done, you know, or possibly even have the right to refuse if we don't believe. I can't imagine certain circumstances off the top of my head, but I guess I'm just looking for the flexibility rather than it just being the case that, you know, the city can dictate when that rule can be lifted or not, but ICPOC doesn't have an opportunity to kind of collaborate and participate in those decisions as well.
What I'd love is for everybody to take a look. I know we've done this before, but if you could take a look at the ordinance. So the couple of changes that I brought forward were things that we'd looked at before. And, you know, the HRC nomination process was just an error, I think, in the sort of putting together of this ordinance. It just didn't get, they didn't think about how subsequent nominations would have to happen. And then, of course, I don't think they anticipated sort of our NACOL training and then thinking about how independent and us setting up a firewall between us and council. But these are things that we brought forward and said these are things that we, and so I would certainly greatly appreciate if everybody would take a look at the ordinance. You can use the copy that you know, I sent today, or I can send the complete ordinance as it stands right now before any changes to you all, and give a look and see if there are other things that you would argue needed to be changed or that should be prioritized. I think Jude's point about the language right now just says with the permission of the police chief. So it's not clear who could request it. That also means that there's no restrictions on who could request it. So ostensibly we should be able to say, hey, we'd like to investigate this thing, but we'd have to get the permission of the police chief. It might be, if there were a temporal piece in there or some conditions put in to say, for example, I'm not doing the lawyer wording off the top of my head, but that if an internal investigation and or any criminal investigations were complete, then ICPOC could XYZ. Because if that's the piece that would make that challenging and improper and would, as Attorney Slade said, trample over people's civil rights, you know, if that's sort of the rate limiting factor, we could say, for example, if that thing has cleared, then we would like to have that ability. So I think we could certainly tweak, and we could ask for tweaks to, you know, as written. Of course, they run that past the city attorney's office, such that things are legal and legally binding. And there will be some conversation. And so council can vote it up or down on the 6th, or they can opt to postpone the vote, do some more work, and vote on it again at another time. You know, if there are still changes that don't need to be worked out, so that have not yet been worked out, I'm sorry. So I would appreciate as many eyes on this as possible in terms of looking at it and thinking about things that need to be changed. And so I raised some of these points with council yesterday just to show that, you know, I think there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done still. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on that? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner, Councilmember Ramlawi, is your hands up now?
Yeah, that person wanted, I know Bonnie had his hand up and down a couple times. I'm not sure.
I could not see that. I'm so sorry.
Bonnie wants to.
Yeah, just real quick, I think at the very least, I'm supporting what Commissioner Walton said and what Chair Jackson said. We should be able to ask for that review for those specific cases. And somewhere in the ordinance, it needs to be maybe more specific with the fact that we have the ability to ask, as opposed to it's just out there that maybe we could. So if that could be specified in there, I think that would make it better.
Attorney Slay, is there a way, I know I'm not asking you to do your legal work on the fly on Zoom right now, but is there any potential to make wording specific enough so that so that we could make that request so that we could be, so in this case, it's the city who wants us to hurry up and go. But Commissioners Walton and Billups have pointed out there are cases where we might want to do that. Is there a way to word this ordinance change such that we could do that and it be sort of specified in the ordinance? Could we?
There is a possibility. We'll have to carve out some exceptions, like ongoing investigation for criminal, or if there's been a lawsuit that's been served, the city gets put on a litigation hold by the courts. So that would be another. I actually didn't draft this language for you, so I'm not 100% familiar with it. So I'll have to get with Margaret Radebaugh. But we will definitely take all of your requests and questions, so you can, I don't know how you want to just send them into the city attorney's office all in one document, or if you want to send them to Councilmember Ramwali to go in for council questions, so they could also be posed to our response will be sent to all the council members as well. Those are options that you can do. Because we are kind of coming up on the holiday weekend, if we could, get those questions by this time next week, and those suggestions, that will give Attorney Radebaugh at least, 2 or 3 days to be able to put together a legal opinion and maybe provide a different draft for you guys to review.
So I understand, I believe the question about us being able to make that request. So I think I can articulate that. And what I'll do is, if you all can think of other ordinance changes in looking at it, and I'll also just send you the original one in case you haven't, you don't have to dig around for it. If you could get those to me by Monday, the 28th, and then I could compile everything and I would send it to the city attorney's office and copy our 4 liaisons so that they can see it and they'll get the response as well as Administrator Crawford, because this sort of originated with him as well, just to keep him in the loop as well. And then we can see what they come back with. Because certainly, we have the ability to go forward on the 6th and say that we don't like the ordinance changes as they are, and that we'd like some more work to be done on them, and we can ask council to postpone their vote, for example. We'd like to be able to share this, with the community and see if there are other things that might come up, and there is a public hearing, which means people are free to call in and speak. So I'll take what you all give me by Monday, the 28th, put it all together. I will of course return it to the commission, but send it to the city attorney's office and the 4 council liaisons and the city administrator for review and potential more tweaks. Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you. As we discussed these changes, I asked for a meeting last Thursday ahead of the vote yesterday with Ms. Radebaugh and Tom Crawford and the Councilmember Nelson and Radina were there. And I actually posed to change the word may to shall. I wanted stronger.
I know what you mean, but tell people what you mean.
But the discussion was then on the issue of the discretion of the police chief, and leaving the discretion with that position on allowing the investigation by the commission to begin earlier rather than waiting for all the challenges and appeals to any kind of disciplinary actions to non-criminal investigations. So there wasn't support to making that a stronger word. I posed the word shall instead of may, but that did not get support. This commission is still relatively young. Obviously, we have a lot to learn and a lot of changes to make, and we knew that when we adopted the original ordinance and formed the commission, that we were going to make changes based on real life experiences. And the Wimberley case proved to us that there needs to be some changes because although the investigation has been complete by the city, there's still ongoing appeals with some of the disciplinary rulings. So that's what brought this forward. We felt that we were empowering this commission more so by doing this. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of background as to this point right here, that the ultimate, how that got landed on was that they wanted to leave the discretion with the police chief. And I know he's here on the call too. I don't want to put him on the spot, but if people got questions, feel free to ask the chief.
All right, any other thoughts? Questions, comments before we move on?
I really like the use of the word shall in it. I think that would satisfy a lot of things and make a lot of difference. So, as opposed to may.
I appreciate that, Bonnie. I lost that battle, but I'll continue to fight it. I just will say though, one thing, if we do make changes, substantial changes to this ordinance, we will kick this back down to first reading if we make amendments that make a significant change to these proposed changes that were already passed at first reading. So if we come up with changes that make a significant difference to these, it gets reverted back to first reading, just so everyone knows. Thank you.
And I think for us, it's most important that we get this done correctly than quickly. And I know there is like a speed thing, but that's not us. So I think what we want is for this to be good, and we want it to be reasonable. We want it to work for the commission. So if it needs another couple readings, I think we're fine with that. It'd be better, obviously, if we don't have to, but I think if we do, then that's okay too. All right, so now on to new commissioner selection, and this is just a point of information. We have 2 openings on our commission at this present second, and we have several applicants. And so I've done this before and I'm gonna do it again. I'm going to send you all the applications that we received from these applicants. And so what I'd like you to do is kind of rank them, maybe top 1, 2, 3, and send me those names back. And then I will ask you all to participate in an interview process where we could interview those top 3 candidates. And so I'd like you to do that, keeping with a mind to, we're replacing Commissioners Caldwell and Evans. And so think about demographics that we might be losing and demographics that we might need. And as you consider these, and so just expect me to be sending you these applications, and then if you could just rank them and get them back to me as soon as you're able, then we can make sure we have less than a quorum and we could start interviewing them on Zoom and talking to them about, why they think they'd be a good fit for this commission. And so I have sent some of these to some of you before, but I will do it again. And then I'd like to get that done in the next couple of weeks if we could. And then last but not least, we are getting ready to produce our first annual report, delayed to some degree by COVID. And there are several pieces to this. One, we need lots of information for the police department. No pressure on the chief, but we are still waiting on that. I want to make sure that I have all the information that I need from all of you. And so Micaiah, for example, if you could send me sort of the names of groups with whom you've met and the approximate date, like in April or May. It doesn't have to be a date, but maybe the month that you met with people. If you could get me that in the next week, that would be helpful because we'd like to include that. Outreach committee, same thing. I think I have most of this information, but if you send it to me, then I know I will have every single thing. Also, if you could please include, I have a copy of the PDF of the bus poster, but if you could tell me the month in which you got that in circulation, that would be helpful. And so we have hired a person to help us put this together who does this professionally. He does annual reports for municipalities and other places. And he is going to put that together for us. And so we have had several meetings with him, and we need to deliver the information to him so that he can, finish putting it together. So if there are activities in which you have participated that need to be included in this, not necessarily our trainings, but if you have met with groups and I might not be aware of that, if you could forward me that information, that would be very helpful, because we need to talk about what we've been doing in terms of outreach and friend raising, and we need to talk about stats from the police department, how many cases we've reviewed, things like that. And so any information that you can get to me would be helpful. If you could do that by June 30th, that would be very helpful. Any questions, comments, thoughts about that? And then I know you all know, but we will be meeting for strategic planning on July 1st, which is Thursday. We'll be doing that in person, and we'll confirm the hours with everybody. And we'll be doing it, Jude, we'll be doing it at the Carrotway.
Yeah, Carrotway Community Center, which is 31.
Carrotway Community Center. And so we'll confirm with everybody the hours, and we'll send out the address to everyone so you know where you're going. You can put in your GPS if you haven't been there before, just as a reminder. Are there any reports from committees?
Well, just we're still meeting with the crew subcommittee, and for the past few weeks we had Mr. Joseph Royal from the payroll officer for the 15th District Court talk to us about the probation and the policies that they are following over there. And also we had last week, just over a week ago, also the county prosecutor, Mr. Elish Savitt, came and talked to us about the changes that he is proposing, and the right individuals to expunge some of the things that are related to whether it's drug position, marijuana, etc., and to keep us posted with the changes, because one of the issues that we are focusing on as a subgroup is the payroll and probation, and we want to see what is there to help out and what are the strategies and the what's available in terms of resources for the individuals who have been in these situations. So this is something that we are still working on, and I probably will get you some information to be included in the report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other communications that any commissioners want to make to the body? Denise, do we have anybody else for public comment?
No, we do not.
I guess I just want to say too, we had our May meeting outside. We had a public forum. We were really fortunate to have a large number of attendees. We were very happy to meet with people in person outside. We had lots of people just come and tell their stories and talk about public safety in Ann Arbor in terms of their experiences, what they hoped for, what they wished for, what they'd seen. There were a number of MLive articles, I think 3 or 4 articles written about it in different contexts. I'm just going to say it. Commissioner Carter's comments were well received and well documented about her time living in Ann Arbor. Many people, those comments resonated with many people, as did Commissioner Ships about being a young person in Ann Arbor. And I, on a personal note, was encouraged and touched by the turnout and the participation from so many members of our community, but sort of bookended by these 2 commissioners and their dissimilar stations in life, and yet their similar experiences. And I think it says a lot about where we are in terms of public safety in Ann Arbor. And so I'm just very grateful for the participation of so many people who took time to come out and participate with us. We will check in with everyone about whether we're having a July meeting or whether we'll take a summer break as we did last year. And then if we have a meeting in August, it is possible for us to do that in person. And we might want to get back to in-person meetings. There are some people who can engage with us when we are online this way, who maybe can't engage with us in person. So maybe we'll consider whether we're going to go back and forth, maybe every other month, or whether we'll just switch back to in-person. I think as a commission, we can decide what to do and how to do that. We have some flexibility there. But I just wanted to thank everyone for the May meeting, and we'll talk about the July meeting. I'm sure we can do that at the strategic planning. And if there are no other communications, at 7:05, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all so much. Thank to all of the commissioners, Councilmember Ramlawi, Lieutenant Dorch, Chief Cox, Attorney Slay for joining us, and as always, Denise Janess, who makes everything run. And thank you to everyone who has participated with us today.
Thank you all. Good
Thank
night.